A few years ago, I was a millwright specializing in rebuilding natural gas turbines. My responsibility was overseeing crane lifts, a critical role with immense pressure. I had been entrusted with ensuring safety, and it was my duty to prevent accidents, damage, and injuries during lifts. This story takes place about 2 years ago, but to understand it fully, you need to step back a couple more years to get the whole picture. When I joined this crew, I was the new guy and had to prove myself. After approximately 6 months, I had demonstrated my rigging competence. My superintendent recognized this and put me in charge of all rigging tasks. I wasn't the fastest rigger, but I was meticulous about safety, ensuring each lift was executed correctly. This gave my superintendent the freedom to focus on other tasks without worrying about the rigging process. Enter Larry, another millwright who joined around the same time I did. At first, Larry and I didn't get along, but over a few months, we developed a friendship. Larry was the type to act first and think later, a real workhorse, even though he lacked specialization. As we spent more time working together, it became apparent that Larry harbored jealousy over my position as the rigger. He occasionally made comments about taking my job, not to get me fired, but to move me down the ladder while he claimed the role of rigger. When the supervisor was around, Larry made sure he overheard these remarks. Here, I should note that I stood out from the rest of the crew. I had been raised in a strict Christian cult, and while I had left that life behind in my mid-20s, some of its principles still stuck with me. I didn't indulge in intoxicants, tobacco, or recreational drugs. I spoke professionally, avoiding slang or colloquialisms. In a crew of rough-and-tumble workers accustomed to harsh environments and long stints away from home, I didn't quite fit in. In contrast, Larry seamlessly blended with the group, and this played a significant role in his rise. Larry quickly became the superintendent's confidant. He indulged the boss with gifts of alcohol, stayed out late, and even roomed with him on business trips. I, on the other hand, adhered to a disciplined routine: work, gym, meal preparation, and adequate sleep. While I knew my work spoke for itself, I was aware that this limited my social advantage in the workplace. Fast forward 18 months. We started a new project just before the COVID-19 outbreak. About 2 weeks in, I had to attend a mandatory 40-hour class in another state, lasting almost a week. I sought and received permission from my supervisors, and during my absence, Larry was in charge of rigging. During my time at the class, a few days in, I received a shocking text from Larry: "I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat." Perplexed, I responded, "What are you talking about?" Larry's reply was chilling: "When you get back, I'll be the rigger. You can do the crap work from now on." In the moment, I offered a retort I'm not proud of but felt to be true: be careful about cutting the throat of someone smarter than you. The day after passing my class and returning to work, I found that Larry had indeed taken over my position as rigger, and he reveled in assigning me menial tasks. To make matters more frustrating, Larry did not possess the same level of competence as I did. I was upset, feeling that my position had been taken away due to our superintendent's personal preference, despite my qualifications. However, the situation changed rapidly. The COVID-19 pandemic forced the project's shutdown, and after a few days of unexpected leave, we were called to an emergency shutdown in a remote location in Alabama. We arrived and immediately began work on the troubled turbine. On this particular unit, we needed to lift off the entire roof to access the inner workings. The roof wasn't heavy, but its size and the critical components around it made the lift a challenging operation. Generally, we would unbolt the roof, attach a harness, and gradually raise it with a crane while being tied off to ensure safety. On this day, my superintendent instructed me to work on the roof alongside Larry. However, Larry's rigging was flawed. His setup didn't account for crane boom deflection, and I noticed this critical error. Boom deflection occurs when a crane takes the load of an object, the crane's boom flexes downward, and the object could swing unpredictably. It can lead to accidents, damage, or injuries. I knew that the consequences could be disastrous, but I decided to let Larry face the outcome himself. Larry was signaling the crane operator to hoist the roof without understanding the perilous situation. The weight of the roof caused the crane's boom to flex, leading to the roof shooting into the air and swinging violently towards vital equipment. Larry and I were perched on the roof as it swung wildly, crashing into a control panel and damaging it. The nearby workers rushed to the scene to assess the chaos. Larry was shaken, but I wore a knowing smile. He had effectively hung himself. Once the roof was safely grounded, our superintendent arrived. While he reprimanded Larry severely, he turned to me, inquiring why I didn't intervene. I responded calmly, "I just did what Larry told me to do." The superintendent, understanding the unspoken subtext, promptly demoted Larry and reappointed me as the rigger. A few shifts later, everything returned to normal. Remarkably, Larry and I are now close friends. We've been through numerous trials together, supporting each other along the way. Today, he serves as the foreman on our crew, allowing me to excel in my role. Sometimes, failing your way to the top can be a valid path in our field, and I couldn't be happier for him. I, 22M, work in construction and lead several crews as a foreman, given my extensive experience in the field since I started working during summers at the age of 14. With a job that requires a truck capable of pulling various trailers and maneuvering challenging job sites, especially during harsh winter conditions, I drive a new lifted pickup, F350. This context sets the stage for an unexpected and somewhat frustrating series of events that unfolded in my life. About 4 months ago, after a long day at work, I decided to treat myself to a Big Mac from McDonald's, as I didn't feel like cooking. Little did I know, this seemingly mundane fast food run would set off a chain of events. After picking up my order, I was attempting to pull out into the parking lot and head home, but a momentary lapse of focus led to a minor collision. I was preoccupied looking to my left to assess the traffic on the road, while the vehicle in front of me was also stationary and inattentive. Consequently, I ended up gently brushing against his mirror and scraping his car door with the front end of my truck. In an instant, I shifted into damage control mode. I promptly reversed my truck and stepped out to ensure that the other driver, let's call him Brent, was unharmed. I apologized, fully aware that the fault was mine. Concerned about whether we should report the accident to the police, Brent expressed his willingness to resolve the matter without involving law enforcement, given that the incident had occurred in a private parking lot, a relevant point for later. We exchanged our contact information, and Brent struck me as a reasonable and straightforward individual. I suggested that he obtain a damage estimate and that I would pay for it directly in cash to avoid potential increases in my insurance premiums. Brent agreed to this arrangement, and I felt relieved, thinking that we could resolve the situation amicably. Fast forward about a month, and I hadn't heard from Brent or received any updates about the repair estimate. Truthfully, I wasn't too concerned at this point, assuming that if Brent chose not to get the repairs done, it was his decision. However, Brent finally called me a month later, around noon, explaining that he had difficulty recalling my name and needed it to share with the mechanics at the shop, as he felt it seemed like we knew each other. After providing my name, Brent informed me that the repair shop had given him a special deal, a common statement in such situations. He forwarded me the repair estimate, which amounted to $2,403, a sum that exceeded my initial expectations. Nevertheless, I agreed to go ahead with the repair, intending to pay the bill as soon as it was completed. This seemed like a satisfactory arrangement, and Brent indicated that he was content with it. Another month passed by, and I found myself still awaiting any updates from Brent or news about the repairs. Frustration began to build as I wanted to put this incident behind me. He contacted me again, this time around 11 p.m., and proposed a meeting in town. I was somewhat annoyed by the timing, as I had to be at work by 5 a.m. the following day. Nevertheless, I agreed to meet and prepared $2,500 in cash. I also drafted a contract stating that this payment would be accepted as full settlement for the damages. Brent could release me from any and all liability by accepting this payment. This contract essentially formalized our pre-existing verbal agreement. I arrived at the agreed-upon meeting place, gave him the cash, and handed him the contract to sign. Curiously, he barely read the contract and didn't want a copy of it. These actions raised my suspicion, but I chose to give him the benefit of the doubt. Yet another month passed, and the matter remained unresolved. At this point, I was growing increasingly fed up with the situation and simply wanted closure. To my surprise, I received a notice from a lawyer representing Brent, indicating that he was suing me for non-payment after I had supposedly wrecked his vehicle. This development infuriated me, but I also realized that I had a trail of text messages and a signed contract to support my case. I immediately reached out to Brent to address the situation, but he blocked my number. Fortunately, my girlfriend happened to work for a lawyer, and he offered to assist. He explained that the contract I had drawn up held weight, as contracts exceeding $500 in value were enforceable in court in our state. My revenge mission was set in motion. I remembered the logo of Brent's business on the side of his car, and I had taken pictures of the damage. I delved into the Better Business Bureau (BBB) website to determine who owned the company. I found it hard to believe that someone like Brent could own a business, given his erratic behavior throughout this ordeal. To my chagrin, I discovered that he was indeed the business owner. Moreover, his business had accumulated a dozen one-star reviews, all disputing his shady business practices. Many customers complained about quotes that significantly differed from final bills, which sounded eerily similar to my experience. Brent had initially indicated that the repair shop might charge more than the original $2,403, but now he was suing me for $10,000, 4 times the initial estimate. In court, my lawyer meticulously laid out the evidence, which included our text message exchanges and the physical copy of the contract, which Brent had signed. Brent's lawyer, seemingly perturbed and devoid of any substantial argument, tried to construct a series of falsehoods. He alluded to my alleged hit and run, despite Brent having captured an image of my license plate. He also claimed that I had attempted to bully Brent into settling for $2,500, despite the repair costs exceeding that amount. The weakness of his arguments was clear. The highlight of the day came when my lawyer unveiled the printouts of BBB complaints against Brent's business, highlighting the patterns of deception and overcharging. This revelation seemed to undermine Brent's credibility further, and the judge appeared to have seen enough. The judge invited Brent to make any final statements, and Brent shockingly said, "I don't even have the $2,500 anymore. Can I just get that then and we will be okay? His statement essentially confirmed that he had received the money and that his lawsuit was based on fraudulent claims. The judge's ruling was in my favor, and he ordered Brent to cover my legal fees, damages, and lost wages, as I had been required to miss work to attend court. To add a touch of poetic justice to the situation, it turned out that on the day of the hearing, my construction crew was working on a high-wage job that paid approximately $475 per hour. This meant that I was entitled to receive this wage before paying my subcontractors, totaling nearly $5,000. The satisfaction I felt was beyond measure, and I don't think I've ever been happier in my life. The entire experience was frustrating, but it served as a valuable lesson in standing up for my rights and not allowing myself to be taken advantage of. It also reaffirmed the importance of documenting agreements and keeping a paper trail.